Make a gorgeous ombre cake in 4 simple steps. This tutorial starts with a crumb-coated cake. To learn how to get to this point, watch my tutorial on how to make a layer cake, and the link for that is in the top of the screen. Step 1 is to tint different shades of whatever color you choose for your ombre. The more shades you make, the more gradual your ombre will be. So if you're looking for an airbrush effect, where the colors blend into each other in a subtle gradient, instead of quite distinct bands of color, tint at least 4 shades and don't make the difference between each shade too dramatic. There are 2 ways to make different shades of a color. The first method is to start by tinting the darkest shade and mix that with different amounts of plain white buttercream to make lighter shades. The second method is to start with the lightest shade and then add more and more coloring to make darker shades, keeping the ratio of colors the same, for example 1 drop of green for every 2 drops of blue. Step 2 is to spread your colors onto your cake. I like to start at the top, spreading the darkest or lightest shade to cover the top of the cake, so that it sticks out over the edges to make nice sharp angles around the top edge of the cake later. Then spread this same shade around the top of the sides of the cake, and if you have 3 different shades, spread it to cover 1/3 of the cake. 6 shades, 1/6 of the cake. I have 4 shades, so I'm covering the top quarter of the cake, approximately. Then use the next shade below, and since these are going to blend together to make an ombre or gradient, you don't need an even band of color around the cake. It's fine to go down a bit lower in some places and higher up in others. And it's also fine to overlap the color above. Continue down the cake with all of your shades, going right down to the bottom of the cake board to cover up the very bottom of the cake, so there aren't any gaps where you can see the crumb coat. Step 3 is the wiggle. Using the tip of your offset spatula or palette knife, use light pressure to make a zigzag up and down the buttercream as you spin the cake on the turntable, which starts the blending of the different shades of buttercream. And step 4 is to smooth the ombre, and this is the only step that might take some practice, since the other 3 are really quite straightforward if you follow this tutorial. Rest the bottom of the cake comb down on the cake board and press gently against the cake as you spin the turntable. When you can't spin any further, swipe the comb away and scrape it clean on the edge of a bowl. Spread more buttercream over any indents or shallow areas, using the same shade as what's already on that part of the cake. So here, the darkest shade at the top, and the middle shades down here. I like to use a metal cake comb for this, because you can heat the edge for the smoothest ombre frosting. I'm using a blowtorch, but you can use a hairdryer or hot water, and let it cool down for a second so it's warm, not hot. And when you scrape around the cake, it will glide over the buttercream, warming it and pulling it effortlessly to fill in any shallow indents in the surface without causing air bubbles or tiny tears in the buttercream. Now repeat these steps until the frosting is smooth. Spread frosting to cover any indents, matching the shade on that part of the cake, and then scrape around the cake, ideally with a warm metal cake comb. I find holding the comb at a 45-degree angle against the cake gives the best results. And your cake comb hand is staying still. It's the cake on the turntable that's moving, or spinning. Smoothing the frosting takes some practice and some patience. This step took me 5 minutes and 52 seconds in real time, until I was happy with the results of my ombre frosting. You can leave the top edge of the frosting uneven, which works really well for rustic designs and looks very dramatic on cakes with simple designs. Or you can flatten or level it by swiping sideways with your offset spatula or palette knife, making sure you're not pushing down, only sideways, so that you don't create a bulge of frosting around the top edge. Wipe the blade clean on a towel or paper towel after each swipe, so that it doesn't drag buttercream back onto the top edge and leave texture behind. So, in 4 steps, that's how I make an ombre cake. I hope this tutorial was useful. Visit my cake school on BritishGirlBakes.com to learn hundreds of other cake decorating techniques and designs broken down into simple steps, close-up videos, and easy-to-follow instructions. Thanks for watching.